Hello, everyone. So I'm quite enjoying this book. It's the Dolphin's Song. That's as part of this book, and it's in the Grange Library and recommended by our Grange librarian, Miss Jermack. Quite enjoying it, especially because I was born in South Africa, I come from South Africa, so it's quite interesting to sort of reconnect with the story, and also I love dolphins. So, in the last chapter, there was this crazy shark experience, and listen to that chapter to catch up if you haven't yet. Anyway, we're on chapter 7. The following morning, Martine lay on her stomach on her bunk in the sea kestrel, watching a porthole shaped dawn divide the ocean into sections of pink, apricot, and blue. There was not a trace of land on the horizon. At some point during the night, Africa had slid away, taking Sawubona, Jemmy, and Martine's only connection to a home of any kind away with it. She was adrift once more, as she had been after her parents' death, a stranger in a strange watery wilderness, unsure of what lay ahead. And how did she feel about that? Well, so far, much better than she'd expected. Overnight, her mood had lifted. It was reassuring to know that the shark encounter predicted by both her dreams and the cave paintings was over, especially because it had all ended happily. It was Norm in the pictures. She even had an explanation of sorts for Grace's boat fence warning, because the steel mesh of the cage could be said to resemble a fence. The sharks had returned to haunt Martine's sleep again, but that was hardly surprising given that she'd almost seen a man swallowed alive by one. The important thing was she didn't have to worry about sidestepping destiny anymore, particularly since she had resolved that for the entire 10 days of the voyage, nothing and nobody was going to get her into the water. She still felt bad about the row with her grandmother, and she was still concerned about her future at Sawubona. Life without Jemmy wasn't worth contemplating. But with no way of communicating with anyone, Miss Faulkner had banned mobile phones on the ship because she wanted the class to lose themselves in nature. There was nothing she could do about it until she returned to Cape Town. To help them recover from the trauma of Shark Alley, Miss Faulkner and Mr. Manning, the conservationist accompanying them on their voyage, had taken the class for a seafood dinner at a harbourfront restaurant in Simonstown. Afterwards, they'd walked through the pretty historic streets to the docks, and there she was, the sea kestrel, all lit up like some magical cruise liner, boarding under the moth-swirling harbour lights, with the seaweedy air teasing her nostrils. Martine had begun to appreciate how fortunate she was. She'd caught Ben's eye, and it was obvious that he felt the same way. There were 20 clean but basic cabins on the ship, with 2 bunks apiece. Martine was sharing a cabin with Sherilyn Meyer, a close friend of Lucy's. Sherilyn was nice enough, but a bit helpless. She had a phobia about all creatures with more than 2 legs. Before getting into her bunk that first night, she'd made Martine crawl around the floor checking for spiders. Martine hadn't really minded, because Sherilyn's other concern that she might get seasick meant that Martine got to have the top bunk she was coveting. But she was thankful when the South African girl was at last satisfied. The cabin was a bug-free zone, and she was able to climb between the sheets and fall into an exhausted sleep. It had been a very, very long day. When the red ball of sun freed itself from the smoky blue ocean, Martine slipped carefully off her bunk, showered as quietly as she could manage, and went in search of sustenance. It was still early, and apart from a couple of crew smoking outside the engine room, there was nobody about. She passed a galley hatch from which copious quantities of steam and the smell of frying bacon issued. "Ah, hungry sailors," said a voice. Its owner sounded as if he gargled regularly with beach sand. "Step this way for an Indian Ocean breakfast." Martine squinted between the stainless steel shelves and dangling copper pots and saw a lively African face. A hand came out and gripped hers. "Alberto," said the gravelly voice. How do you do, Miss Martine? Good morning, Alberto, responded Martine. I'm very well, thank you. Have we met before? Alberta indicated that she should enter the galley through the main door. Martine walked into a cooking area where a diminutive African with a white cap of hair and remarkable wrinkle-free skin was juggling sizzling pans of bacon, spiced potatoes, and eggs with octopus-like dexterity. Without pausing to consult her, he lifted Martine with his small, strong hands and sat her on one of the stainless steel benches. A mug of milky coffee came her way, followed by a bacon and fried banana roll. It was not a combination of flavors that Martine had ever considered, but the crispy bacon combined with a caramel taste of bananas fried in butter was addictive. No sooner had she eaten one than she wanted another. Are you Mozambican? She asked the chef in between mouthfuls. What tribe are you from? I am Tsonga, Alberta replied at last. The Tsonga are island people living mainly in the Bazaruto archipelago off the coast of Mozambique. And you are the girl in the story, no? The one who can ride a white giraffe. Martine could never get over how far news travelled on the bush telegraph. African tribes and big extended families had spent generations communicating with one another across vast swathes of savanna, desert, or mountain ranges, and their conversations seemed to travel almost on the wind. Then again, several newspapers had carried photographs of her and Jemmy, so it was possible Alberta had simply read about her and might never have heard of the Zulu myth. She took another bite of her bacon and banana roll, savoured it, and then said evasively, What do African islands look like, Alberta? Do they have thick bush on them and thorn trees, or are they white with palm trees? She was thinking of the island calendar in Grace's living room, which showed the Caribbean home of her father and his ancestors. All I know is that when I return from a long voyage and I see my home island, Benguera, my eyes feel peaceful, Alberta replied. Martine understood what he meant. She experienced the same sensation whenever she passed through the gates of Sawubona. But the Bazaruta archipelago was nothing like the golden waving grassland, thickets of acacia and herds of zebra and elephant in the place that made her own eyes feel peaceful. Alberta conjured up images of palm-fringed islands scattered like snowy teardrops across a turquoise lagoon. In centuries past, he said, when it was the bountiful southern tip of the trading routes of Arabia, the Queen of Sheba had made the islands her personal playground. Martine knew nothing about the Queen of Sheba and didn't like to appear ignorant by asking where Sheba was, or if, in fact, she had ruled over it, but it turned out that she wasn't the only one who was unclear about the Queen's origins. Alberta said that while most Africans believed the ancient kingdom of Sheba to have been close to the Horn of Africa where Eritrea and Ethiopia were now, others were convinced it was in the Yemen in Arabia. Martine liked the notion that the Queen was African royalty and pictured her as a striking ebony woman with the high cheekbones that occurred among the tribes of northeast African nations. She'd have been dressed in robes edged with precious jewels and seated on a throne mounted on the prow of a great sailing ship. In between visiting King Solomon to test his wisdom, as she was reported to have done in biblical times, she'd have floated around the Bazaruto Islands, eating oysters and pink lobsters and buying gold. The Portuguese came next in the 16th century. Alberto rolled his eyes a little when he talked of them, and it was clear that he was not a fan of the way they had colonized his country, gobbling land, setting up ivory trading posts and penal colonies, and making a fortune harvesting the oyster beds around the Bazaruto Islands, which yielded some of the creamiest pearls on earth. Legend had it that the captains of the ships sent to transport precious cargoes of gold, pearls, and beads hurled the odd casket overboard in locations marked on secret maps in the hope that they might one day be able to return for them, and that since they really did, treasures beyond imagining lay buried under the seas around the island. Modern life on Benguera seemed to consist of prawn feasts and trees laden with cashew nuts, marulas, and monkey oranges. Alberta talked proudly of how the Tsonga had remained more or less untouched by the decades of invaders, civil war, and strife which had affected the rest of Mozambique. During the war, we would sit under the palms on our islands and watch the flashes of rocket fire on the mainland light up the night skies, and our hearts would break for our brothers and sisters. Even now, we hear stories of hunger, disease, and murder in the cities, but we know nothing of such things on Benguera. If today you leave your camera on the beach, tomorrow somebody will find it and bring it to you. The smallest children can walk anywhere on the island by themselves. We don't have locks on our doors. We say to our neighbors, "Come, everything we have is yours." To Martine, it sounded like paradise. Although, like all paradises, it had its little drawbacks. In the summer months, the heat and malaria-carrying mosquitoes were torture, and Alberto's home island was famous for having enormous numbers of snakes. "These are small things," the chef said. "Truly we are blessed to live in such a wonderful place. But you know, even special places can change. With the islands becoming so popular, many outsiders are coming in, and some of our young people are moving out. They get tired of the old ways and want to move to the towns where they think they will find more money and more fun." "I wish we were going to the Bazaruto Islands," Martine said. "We're only going as far as Inhambane in the south of Mozambique, where we're supposed to help count the population of dugongs, and then we're returning to Cape Town." Alberto gave a throaty laugh, revealing a little red gemstone set in one of his front teeth. It flashed like fire in the galley lights. "That is true," he said. "We are not going to Bazaruto, but you never know in this life." Right, so what's coming ahead? Stick around and find out.